Hey guys, welcome back to our channel. This is How We Life. My name is David, and we have the pleasure of having Ladislas Maurice with the Wandering Investor here.
How you doing, David?
Good to see you, man.
Always.
We are actually here in our apartment. We just finished the renovations. It has been an incredible journey, and we thought this would be a really cool opportunity to actually bring Ladislas here, because we actually met about a year ago here in Istanbul, looking at real estate ourselves. We had actually just kind of started out on our journey of Plan B. And obviously I know that can mean a lot of different things for a lot of people, but I know that that's kind of your specialty: international investments, internationalization and diversification. And so I'd really love to kind of get your take on that. But before we get into that, I'd love to know kind of how you got started, who is the Wandering Investor, and what it is that you guys do there.
Sure, so a bit of background. So I studied business in Canada, went to college there, then went to grad school in Australia, studied law and business, and then I went into corporate for a number of years. So I first started in Switzerland, so for the big food company Nestle.
Oh, wow.
And then I went to Africa for 7 years, and my last role in corporate was being in charge of the milk business for a few West African countries for Nestle. So at the age of 30, after having spent most of my 20s in Africa, I decided to leave because I wanted a new challenge.
Very cool.
My thought initially was to get a job in Dubai, but I thought first, hey, let me just go on a really cool road trip. So I drove from Oman to Paris by car.
You drove?
Yeah. So went
Talking about road trips.
Yeah, that was a pretty cool road trip. So we drove through all of Dubai, obviously, all of Iran, Armenia, Georgia, all of Turkey. Turkey was really amazing. It was an eye-opener. And then Greece, Bulgaria, Romania, Ukraine, and then Paris. Amazing road trip. And you know, when you work 60, 70 hours a week in corporate, you just don't have time to manage your own finances. And for the first time, I had both money, so savings, and the time to reflect on what to do with my savings, and the time to see opportunities as I was traveling. So I'd go into, Tbilisi, for example, in Georgia. I'd go see real estate agents, I'd go see lawyers, etc. I'd analyze the market. I'd be like, wow, this is quite interesting, or not, etc. Going through these various cities. And then I started doing flips.
In Georgia, or just in other markets?
In other markets. So mostly in Central Europe and the Balkans. Okay. And then it reached a point after a few years where my friends would be asking me, hey, Ladislas, you're posting all these pictures on Facebook when it was still a thing.
Sure.
It's like, you're in all these crazy countries, but you don't seem to have a job. What do you do? So I just started this blog, The Wandering Investor, where I started just
this
is what I do. So I started writing about the investments I make, the analysis, and it helped me put essentially my investment thesis on paper, just out there in public. This is the case for investing in this country, and then I get positive feedback, negative feedback, etc. And then what started as a hobby just grew into a business, helping people internationalize and diversify.
Cool.
Yeah.
Did you, because I know kind of how, I started thinking about like emerging markets. I read like Jim Rogers and Doug Casey and those guys, and obviously that kind of gave me a lot of ideas. Were you always kind of thinking, I definitely need to diversify internationally, and I need to be in these other markets to protect, kind of what I've got? And maybe that led you into thinking about like citizenships and second and third citizenships and Plan B, or was it more about just, this is the opportunity that's in front of me right now?
It started off as the opportunity because throughout my studies, whenever I had free time, I'd get internships or jobs in emerging markets. And then with Nestle, I asked specifically for hardcore emerging markets. Okay. I remember after my 4 years in South Africa, I had the option to go to Asia, and I said, no, I want to go deeper into Africa. I asked for Congo. Apparently it was the first time that...
So you're looking for a challenge?
Yeah, I was looking for a challenge. Apparently it was the first time at Nestle that someone was going to HR saying, give me Congo.
Give me Congo.
So they didn't have Congo, they had Ghana, so I went to Ghana. I've been spending a lot of time in emerging markets. It's what I know, it's where I'm able to spot the opportunities, and it's where I have a competitive advantage. So initially it was just about, knowing that there are opportunities in these countries, spotting them, and then being able to navigate the ambiguity of operating in such environments.
And that's the tricky part. That's where all the money is made, I think. Kind of sweet spot and the ambiguity of things, and kind of the chaos of it sometimes, and knowing how to kind of find value in that. Because most people, they look at an emerging market and it's like, okay,
Yeah.
Like it's just too much. It's too much chaos.
It's a different type of risk for sure. And only later did I really start getting into the citizenships and the residencies. Started seeing how increasingly crazy some governments were behaving. So as a natural hedge, then I wanted to obtain more of those.
Makes sense. I think that's kind of very similar to our journey, because we're investors by trade, but then, the last 2 years have definitely taught us that, no matter how solid your government is, no matter how much freedom you think you have, it can all go away in a blink of an eye. So you definitely need to hedge not only your wealth autonomy, but your personhood autonomy. And that was really important for us. And that's one of the reasons that we're here in Turkey, looking at investments and looking at other markets. So that actually kind of leads me to why Turkey? What do you see in the value of real estate here? Is it only because of the CBI program and kind of what the cost of the CBI program was, which is the $250,000? Or do you see it as, the CBI program, and then separately, it's a good market to be in for real estate?
The CBI is definitely attractive in Turkey. When it was $250,000 to obtain citizenship by making investments here and not overpaying in any way whatsoever, it was honestly a complete no-brainer. At $400,000,
that's the new, sorry to interrupt, that's the new requirement that is going to be enacted June 13th, I believe.
Correct. At $400,000, so you invest in any type of real estate anywhere in Turkey, no restrictions. So you buy like locals, you buy apartments on the local market. So it's not approved development. For people worth a certain amount of money, it's again a complete no-brainer, because obtaining Turkish citizenship is ultimately a generational move. So it's not just about getting a Turkish passport for yourself, it's about getting a Turkish passport for your children, for your grandchildren, et cetera, et cetera. It's a generational move. So being able to buy decently valued real estate in a gorgeous country and get a passport essentially for free, because the application is essentially just a few $1,000s, so it's pretty much free, is an absolute no-brainer. So in terms of the value proposition of real estate, last year, back when we met, real estate was an absolute steal, so that was also a complete no-brainer. It was a 2x no-brainer. Now prices have gone up in USD terms, so people think that because the lira has gone down that prices have become a lot more affordable. They have not. Prices have actually gone up in USD terms. Why? Because when inflation starts to pick up, anyone that had a cash balance of liras doesn't quite feel safe anymore, and they want to put it into a hard asset. So whether it be gold, to some extent crypto, or local real estate, people just go and just buy something that they can essentially touch and feel. Does it mean that it's a fantastic market for foreigners to get into? I'll just say that overall at this point, Istanbul is very decent value. So it's not a steal anymore, but it's decent value. We're talking of a city of 15 million people at the crossroads of Asia, Africa, Europe, Middle East, etc. Very vibrant, a lot of trade, and you can get near prime real estate for less than $2,000 a square meter. That's cheaper than Sofia in Bulgaria. And again, Sofia in Bulgaria, probably one of the best deals in the European Union. But then Turkey, just in terms of absolute value, is interesting. It's also important for people to know who invest in Turkey that there's a lot of volatility. Historically, it's always been a very volatile market. There's inflation. It's a region where there's often war, so we see it now with Ukraine and Russia. So people just need to understand that it's a market that comes with different levels of risks that, for example, we are used to in Western countries. So here the risk is not really interest rates per se, interest rates going up and people not being able to afford mortgages and then the market crashing. The reality is there are barely any mortgages anymore in Turkey. So it's
very low leverage here.
Yeah, so now it's a cash market. So if you're in the US and everyone's leveled up to their necks, you buy here, you're buying in a completely different market with a completely different set of risks. But people need to understand these risks. So for example, would I tell people, oh, go all in Turkey? Absolutely not. You want to be diversified, not go too deep in any market. Istanbul definitely has a place in some people's portfolio, even actually from a pure lifestyle point of view. Personally, I spend a lot of time in the Middle East, in Europe, in Africa, and Istanbul is the best connected city for this. Even for flights to Latin America, it's very well connected. Just having a partial base where you spend a few months of the year without becoming tax resident is very interesting.
100% agree with that. Yeah.
And it can also be, you don't necessarily need to go for citizenship in Turkey. So if you buy for, I think it's $75,000 of real estate in Turkey, you can claim residency. So just by buying real estate here, you have a call option on residency. There are multiple types of investors. They're investors, they just look at numbers. And those are people you'll find they'll be buying in Cleveland or in Detroit and buying random houses with problematic tenants, and they're just getting yield. Yeah. And that's great. If you come to one of those guys, and it works, it's great. Yeah. But sometimes as an investor, you don't just look at the yield, you also look at the lifestyle element that a property can give you. And people tell me, oh, but Ladislas, that's not smart. I mean, sure, but sometimes some of my real estate in my portfolio, even if I don't actually spend time in these apartments because I just rent them out long term, I have emotional pleasure out of owning beautiful real estate.
What is that value to you, obviously,
exactly,
as opposed to just a 10% ROI?
Yeah, so like in Budapest, I own some apartments in gorgeous historical buildings, get a decentish yield. I get a real pleasure out of owning these properties. Sometimes I stay there. I like it. I mean, it's like an apartment like this. I mean, these views are absolutely unique. People have been literally fighting for thousands of years to be able to live on the Bosphorus, you know, when it was Constantinople,
so
Byzantium. Wow. Like this view, people wanted this, have been wanting this exact view for thousands of years.
Well, that's actually a really good point. I haven't thought about that.
So it's unique.
Yeah, it is.
It's absolutely unique.
And I think, you know, you're getting a lot of bang for your buck in terms of lifestyle. And that's another reason why Carmen and I really love it here is, again, the real estate is not going to perform here as it does maybe in the US when you've levered up. But for us, again, it's the lifestyle, connectivity. As you say, I mean, you know, the brand new airport here in Istanbul, that'll get you anywhere in the world within 1, maybe 2 flights.
The country never closed its borders during the whole medical issue. So that's also an important point for some people.
And that takes me to the next point is for us, you know, when we were looking at different places to invest in outside of the US and for that, you know, diversification, we were looking at, okay, you know, who's done what over the last 2 years? You know, obviously scratch off, you know, Australia, Canada, UK, and we started looking at those jurisdictions and those countries and those governments who had a more kind of sensible approach to the whole thing. And, you know, for good or worse, Turkey was opening up way before the rest of the world. You know, I mean, way before Europe. Remember, we were flying in and out of Turkey easily, and everybody couldn't believe how easy it was to fly in and out as tourists. And this was actually just before we got the residency.
I saw some statistics, and I'm not sure whether it's in 2020 or 2021, but Turkey had 3 of the top 10 airports in Europe in terms of volume. So the 2 airports in Istanbul and Antalya.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah,
more than Frankfurt, London, Paris.
I remember flying from the States in, I think it was 2021, the beginning of 2021, when everything just kind of started opening up. We could actually, you know, take an international flight, and going through Frankfurt was absolutely dead. I had to just go from your plane that you're connecting to the other plane, and that was it. You know, don't look up, you know, nothing. But then when you got here to Istanbul, I mean, it was still pretty reduced at that point, but way more than what I saw the airports in the US and the airports in Europe. I think that definitely helped kind of put Istanbul and Turkey on the map for people that are looking for, you know, that kind of second home or the diversification aspect of it. And so now as we kind of think about, you know, as the CBI program is now changing and shifting, and, you know, that $250,000 requirement, granted, it is a lot of money, but not comparatively to other CBI programs where you're actually forced to buy from like 3 developments in the country, and that's it. And there's no way those things are going to perform at all, you know, much less a 4 or 5% return. Now that it's moving from a $250,000 requirement to a $400,000 requirement, do you think it still makes sense specifically for CBI, or do you think there's other countries now that might be able to step up and kind of provide that same kind of value?
So in terms of equivalent value, there's nothing out there. So if you want cheaper, but it's not really cheaper, you can buy a passport in the Caribbean. So for example, for a single applicant, People like to say it's 100,000, but actually it's more like 130 after all legal fees, and then you have to pay extra for all your dependents, your spouse, etc. But the thing with these programs is that you pay and that money is gone. It's essentially a donation. It's citizenship by donation to the government, not by investment. And like you say, the properties, when there's a property option, completely overpriced properties, typically 2x versus the local market. So when you sell, you won't get your money back. So look, you need to calculate for yourself, am I better off losing approximately 150K now, but then I still have, 250K to play with, and can I make that money work hard for me for 3 to 5 years, which is the amount that you need to block your money in Turkey, because you can sell the properties after 3 years without capital gains after 5 years. So that's a personal decision that you need to make on how hard you think you can make your money sweat. But again, a lot of these citizenship by investments or by donation in the Caribbean, they have a limit in terms of generations. Whenever you have a kid, you need to pay.
Really?
When you have a grandkid, you need to pay. Great-grandchildren can't get citizenship. It's not a real citizenship in many ways, but this here is, again, generational. But Turkey, though, I see that, sure, short-term, medium-term, it's going to make headlines for not always very positive things. Long-term, it's a country that is definitely on the right trajectory.
When you do look at it and you kind of compare apples to apples, Turkey does, for us, have so much going for it for the next, as you say, kind of beyond the 5 years, more like that 10, 15, 20-year play. Really, if you are looking at investing in Turkey and buying real estate, and take it kind of aside the CBI program, but just looking at it as a pure investment, then you really do need to look at that longer term view, that 10, 15.
And that's what I really like as well about your channels, that you guys, because a lot of people come to Turkey, they just go to Istanbul and they go to Antalya and they're like, oh, blah, blah, pretty cool, blah. But you actually travel around the country, and you don't just fly from airport to airport, you rent a car, you go into these small villages, these small towns all over Turkey. So you have a good understanding of the country, not just of Istanbul and Antalya. And as you travel around, you see the amazing infrastructure. You go to these random cities that any European or North American has never heard of. So for example, Konya, in the middle of the country, no one in Europe or the US has ever heard of it. Over 2 million people, and you get there and everything is brand new. Like all the highways, all the hospitals, all the universities. The city is surrounded by all of these brand new factories from companies outsourcing from Europe. The country has made tremendous progress, and people like to say, oh, but look at the currency. It's like, sure, emerging markets, it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's just the normal cycle of emerging markets. But the fundamentals in Turkey are quite strong. So short term, there are issues because Turkey imports essentially most of its energy, and with energy prices going through the roof, that is very negative for the country's current account balance. But it's also something that the government has been acutely aware of for many years. And that's why you always hear issues with Turkey being a bit aggressive in the Black Sea or in the Mediterranean. It's because they understand that one of Turkey's core vulnerabilities is the fact that most of the energy is imported. So when they find gas fields on their own seabed, they're not going to let the Cypriots or the Greeks take it. They're very focused on trying to get as much energy, local energy, as possible. And it also explains the whole politics around pipelines, gas pipelines and oil pipelines all going through Turkey, because it understands its core issue. Short term, will it be able to fight off the energy prices that are going up? Probably not, but at least the government has been working for many years, seeing that it's going to be an issue. And already the ball is rolling to try to fix it in the next few years, because it's a process that takes like 10, 15 years.
It takes a while. Now we've kind of gone through Turkey and kind of the reasons why we think Turkey could make sense within a diversified portfolio of real estate. As we now move away from Turkey, are there any other markets that you see that you're kind of interested in, you think makes sense, either from an investment standpoint or CBI and investment, or just maybe even CBI?
From a CBI point of view, there aren't many countries that make sense from an investment point of view combined with the CBI. There are quite a few countries that offer interesting residency options. For example, Montenegro, where I spend a lot of time, gorgeous country. And then, for example, a lot of Russians and Ukrainians went to Montenegro when the whole thing went, especially those that already had apartments, and then they were able to claim residency based on their apartments.
Wow, okay.
So they had Airbnbs, so apartments in Montenegro, absolutely beautiful, putting them on Airbnb, making some decent yields,
Like 5-6%?
Yeah, 5-6%,
Okay.
7% if you stretch it.
And those are all cash deals?
Yeah, cash. No, you can't lever in Montenegro.
Okay.
And then they were able to use this as a plan B when the war started. And then Latin America is also quite interesting. If we're going to enter a world with food shortages and energy shortages, then some countries where they have a lot of energy, a lot of food production, are starting to increasingly make sense.
And we definitely saw over the last 2 years which of those Latin American countries, how they treated the kind of overall pandemic. If they were severe on their lockdowns or if they were able to open up, they had more kind of common sense approach to the whole thing. We were kind of watching that ourselves. With all that being said, I'm really interested to hear your take. Obviously, you're just starting out. You're not really diversified. You have maybe a small business in Canada, or you're making pretty good money in Australia, and you're looking to say, you know what, I want to start my plan B journey. I don't know where to begin.
So the first thing is to be extremely clear and honest with yourself in terms of what are your objectives. Because sometimes people go in there and they're like, yeah, I want to make great investments, but actually they don't necessarily want a great investment. They just want a plan B. What sort of attributes are you looking for in a plan B? So that's the first question. And some people, plan B just means having money outside of the country, away from their government, so that they have better asset protection. Other people, a plan B can be purely political, where they want a plan B in a country that has a very different political philosophy. So you just need to be very clear in terms of what are you really looking for in that plan B? How much are you willing to invest in this? So that's really the first step.
So really define your goals and kind of what do you want for your family through this plan B.
I know you speak more to families and stuff. Sometimes I'll have single clients. They'll be talking about, they want to buy real estate, and then it turns out that they're actually more interested in dating. So then it's like, wait, are you looking for dating in a country, or are you looking for real estate? Because we can have these two conversations, but ultimately they can be completely separate.
Sure.
Like, if you want real estate, invest here. If you want dating, what are you into? Maybe go there, and then rent. Right. So sometimes people try to shoot too many birds in one investment, but you need to be extremely clear. What are you really looking for? Because there's going to be nothing out there that's going to tick all the boxes. So you're going to have to prioritize what is it that you really want, and what is it that is actually important for you and your family.
Do you think that there should be a bit of an expediency to getting a plan B set up now more than ever? Or do you feel like, there's always going to be opportunities in emerging markets and countries that are going to want to offer a CBI or a Citizenship by Investment program?
Look, there's a risk right now with a lot of the CBIs that are under pressure, particularly from Western countries, the European Union. We've seen Vanuatu losing its visa-free access to the Schengen zone. Your Western audience already has access to the European Union. So if you have a Canadian passport, a US passport, unless you're looking to renounce, which few people are, you don't really need another passport with EU access. If you just kind of accept that you're willing to get a second passport that doesn't give you access to the European Union, then you'll have a lot more options long term, because more countries are going to come up with programs for sure, even if they're under pressure from the European Union.
Sure.
But as the European Union becomes decreasingly a world power and is increasingly going to shift inwards because of its own issues, they're going to be able to put less pressure on small countries, and small countries are going to be like, sure, okay, we don't have EU access for our passports, whatever, but we're able to sell them and we need the money, etc. Because a lot of these countries in the Caribbean, that's most of their budget.
Right.
Because every 5 years there's a hurricane that comes through,
Sure.
wipes out the whole island,
Sure.
and is France giving them a bunch of money? Is Germany giving them a bunch of money? No. So they need to be selling these passports. So is there urgency? Urgency is something that people need to define for themselves, right? Yeah. How urgent? Are there going to be options always? Yes. So I'm not going to be going around telling people, do it now, because the programs are going to disappear. New programs are going to pop up. Sure. But you need to be clear, how urgent is it really for yourself? And then to be very, again, honest with yourself between what is the actual urgency, how urgent is it actually, and how much of it is your own emotional needs and try to be very focused on what the reality is and what your objective is, and then work towards this.
Awesome, man. So where can we find you? We can find you on The Wandering Investor.
Yeah, The Wandering Investor. So the best way to follow me is to go to thewanderinginvestor.com. There's my private list, so sign up to it. It's entirely free. And then you'll get updates and insider information as I travel around the world looking at investments, immigration, and tax opportunities.
Which is a lot of fun to just watch him kind of ping pong all over the world. It's really cool. We'll definitely leave his link down below where you can get in touch with him. Thank you so much, man. Really appreciate it. All right, see you guys later. Oh, also, don't forget, comment down below what you thought about our conversation. If you have any ideas about your own plan B, any questions, we definitely will get down there and try to answer as many as we can. Hit the bell notification because we're going to be putting out videos more frequently now, at least twice a week. And like, subscribe, and we'll see you guys in the next one. See you later.